Hello everyone, good evening guys. If you can hear me, please give me a yes in the chat box. I repeat guys, everyone, if I'm audible to you, please give me a yes in the chat box. All right, great. So guys, I believe that some of us can hear me while some may not. Okay. Anyway, so guys, my name is Mayur and I'm the verbal faculty with career launcher for all international education programs. This is our session on the critical reasoning and specifically how to solve those 700 or 705 plus level questions that we find on the critical reasoning section of the test, right? So first thing we need to understand is what is a typical critical reasoning question all about, and to tell you that there are 8 different types of questions here that you will get on the test. Okay, so these are all the different question types. So you will have a strengthening, weakening, assumption, inference, paradox. So these are 8 key question types that we see on the test. And it's quite important that we understand how to go about these questions. What is the process? What strategy should you use? Because again, each of these questions is very different from each other, right? Therefore, following the right strategy will allow you to navigate through these questions a lot faster. All right. So here, first, let's understand what is a typical critical reasoning question. So there are 3 components to it. Any critical reasoning question that you will find on the test will comprise of an argument, which is a short passage that is given to you. Will then have a question stem that will be given, and it will be followed by answer choices, right? So an argument is a short paragraph that will be given to you. Question stem is basically the question that tells you what type of question you're dealing with. As I said, that is clearly mentioned. It's given to you, right? So it's not something that you have to find out. So you obviously will know what type of question you're dealing with, right? And then obviously you have answer choices. There will always be five choices, and there will always be one correct response that you will find on the test, right? So any critical reasoning question is going to look something like this. Now, the most important thing we need to understand is what is an argument. Okay, so what is a typical critical reasoning argument, and how can we understand the argument a little better so that we are obviously able to solve these questions with a higher accuracy, right? So here, let's understand what a typical argument is all about. Any typical argument is made up of two components, a premise and a conclusion, right? Premise is basically the evidence that is offered by the author, right? So the evidence, reasoning, logic, and conclusion is the main point, the central idea that the author wants to convey, right? So that is the main point of the argument. Okay. So any critical reasoning argument will have the following components to it, which include, as I said, the premise and the conclusion. Premise is the evidence, reasoning, logic, and conclusion is the main point, the central idea that is provided to you. Okay. Now, here, for example, let's have a look at this argument, everyone. Please go ahead, have a look at it. Can you tell me what seems to be the conclusion here, everyone? All right. So here, guys, let's have a look. Now, conclusion is the main point, the central idea. So it should be relatively easier to spot for you as well, right? So the conclusion is that a sandwich with cream is more helpful than a sandwich with butter on it. Now, all you have to do is once you have your conclusion, ask yourselves, why is that the conclusion, right? Why is the author concluding this? Okay. Now, in this case, if we ask the why, I think the response is quite clear that cream contains 50% fewer calories than does butter, and therefore we are saying that a sandwich with cream is more helpful than a sandwich with butter on it. Okay, are we clear here, everyone? Do we understand what is an argument and how can we break the argument as well? Guys, a quick yes or no from your end will help me understand if you and I are on the same page. So I request you guys to be a little active on the chat, and that will be helpful. Everyone, are we clear here? All right. Then. So here, as a strategy, how can you break the argument? Step one is to find the conclusion, take the Y test, and find the premise. So following the logic here, you can deduce the components of any critical reasoning argument that is presented to you. Right. So any argument, you can break it into its components by simply identifying the conclusion, asking the why, and identifying the premise there. Right. So this is a more, basic way how you can actually solve any other critical reasoning argument. Now, learning the common argument patterns is what will make the, difference in solving the easier medium questions and solving the higher difficulty level questions. Once you understand what type of argument it is or what sort of pattern the argument is based on, then identifying the right answer choice becomes a lot easier, right? So for example, here, let's have a look at this typical argument. Let's find out the conclusion and the premise. So everyone, please go ahead. Can we identify the conclusion here? Yeah, everyone, please type in your response on the open chat, Rishabh. Okay, so here, guys, clearly the conclusion is that exercise helps improve cardiovascular health, right? So that is the main point that the author wants to convey here. That exercise will help improve the cardiovascular health, right? Why are we saying so? Because adults who work for 30 minutes a day or a week are less likely to have a heart disease. What sort of argument is this? Now, this is what we call as a causal argument, guys. Now, what do we mean by a causal argument? Simply implying that X leads to Y, right? So, any typical causal argument works on the principle that conclusion and the premise are causally related, right? So, there is a X causes Y relationship between the conclusion and the premise that is given to you, right? So that is something that we must really identify. Now, here, whenever you find any argument which presents an X causes Y scenario, just understand that the argument assumes that X is the only cause. It assumes that it's not a coincidence, right? And it assumes that effect follows cause, right? So X is the only cause, meaning there is no other cause. Not a coincidence, meaning every time X is present, Y will be present, right? Effect follows cause, meaning X leads to Y. Y cannot cause X. Reverse will not be true, right? So that is something that you'll have to identify here, right? Are we clear here, everyone? Any questions related to the causal argument? All right. Now here I have another argument for you. Please go ahead, have a look at it. Let's see if we find the conclusion and the premise here. Please go ahead. everyone. All right. So here, if you look at it, the conclusion is that the new employees overwhelmingly approve of the HR managers, right? Okay. Now, the reason why are we saying so? Because there is a committee that has expressed admiration for HR managers. Now, this is a typical sample argument where, as you can see, a smaller subset is being generalized for the larger group, right? And that is how any sample works. I hope any sample that you find out works on the same principle, that there is a smaller subset, and whatever is true for the smaller group, we generalize that for everyone. Yes or no? So, in any sampling argument, what's the logic going to be? That when an author picks a subset and generalizes the result, the author assumes that subset represents all, right? That sample is a general representative, right? That it represents everyone. That data is valid, okay? Whatever data is being used is valid. It's not biased in any way. It's not, incorrect in any manner. It's fair, right? So how can you identify? Usually you'll find indicators such as sample survey, volunteers, group of people, etc. will be there for you to identify if it is a sampling argument. Remember, these indicators may or may not be there, guys. It's not necessarily true that you'll find these indicators every single time. Okay. So it is not going to be the case every single time. Right. Okay. So that is the sample argument. Here now, let's have a look at another interesting argument. Please go ahead, have a look at it. Let's find out the conclusion and premise here. Right. So let's have a look. The conclusion here is quite clearly given to you that more people lived in countryside 2 centuries ago. And there was a very clear indicator clearly given to you. Now, why? Because clearly the evidence or the data rather has been given to you, which suggests that 90% lived in rural areas in 1800. Now only 20% people live. And therefore, the author seems to be concluding that more people lived in countryside centuries ago. Now, this is what we refer to as a data and statistics argument. Now, what is a common challenge here? In such argument types, what you'll find is that usually they talk about percentages, averages, numbers, and then compare it with numbers basically, right? So whenever the author uses percentages, averages, ratio as evidence and compares them with numbers, that is a bit misleading here, right? Data and statistics, yes, that is the evidence here, that is the pattern out here. Now the challenge here is that if you look at the previous argument, 90% lived in rural areas in 1800. Let's say the population in 1800 was 100. So 90% would be 90. However, now if the population has grown to 1000, even 20% will give you 200. Can we necessarily say more people live in countryside 2 centuries ago? Not really. Now, when is this going to be true? This is only going to be true when I assume that the total remains the same. When I'm assuming that here the population has not changed. Only in that case this is going to work. So whenever we have such an argument type where the author compares percentages with numbers, you got to be mindful of the fact that actual values are also comparable. That is what the author is assuming, right? So the author is assuming that the actual values are comparable, are similar. Are we clear here, everyone? Right then. Okay. So here, let's have a look at a typical argument that we have here, or a question rather, which of the following, if it could be carried out, would be most useful in an evaluation, right? Now, this is an evaluate question. More importantly, I would want you to use the argument types that we've talked about here and see how can we apply that in order to get a better accuracy. So here, guys, please go ahead. Poll is live. Only answer on the poll. Do not share your answer choices on the chat. I'll give you guys a couple of minutes here. Please go ahead, mark your response on the poll. All right, guys. I hope We have marked ending the poll now. If you've not selected your choice, please mark now. Let's have a look. So here, as you can see, guys, 62% people have answered. So few people have not. However, everyone has gone for the right. That is very, very good, guys. So as you can clearly see, this is what we call as a causal argument, right? It clearly shows in the question also that there is a causal relationship, right? So what are the causes of severity? And that is what you have to evaluate. So evaluate simply means that if X is actually the cause or not, right? So here it simply says that what is the cause? Denationalization is the cause of the severe crash. All we have to do is identify if denationalization is actually the cause or not, right? That is what we have to identify. If denationalization is actually the cause or okay. Now, D part is the only logical choice because it simply asks the relevant question that let's compare. So we are saying that denationalization is the cause. Let's find out what happens when there is no denationalization, right? So that is what the first thing should be. Let's identify what happens when there is no denationalization, right? Because it simply points out comparing the severity, which are otherwise similar, that have not experienced denationalization. So if there is still a severe crash, then denationalization is not the cause, and vice versa. Either way, we will get to know if denationalization is actually responsible or not. Are we clear here, everyone? Right? Very good. Very good. Right. So let's have a look at another better question here. So this is another question on a typical argument type that we've talked about. Please go ahead, have a look at this. Which one is most vulnerable to criticism on which of the following grounds here? So let's go ahead, let's identify which one of the choices presents what is being asked. Have a look at it. All right, guys, ending the poll now. So plenty of time here. If you have not marked your choice, please select now. Another 10 seconds will end the poll then. Okay. Here is still only a 75% participation. And as you can see, the accuracy is all over the place, right? There is no one choice. So the movement difficulty level goes up a little, right? You can see how the performance changes as well, right? Even your poll results can give you a fair idea of what difficulty level we are dealing with when it comes to a particular question here, right? So as you can see here, let's understand. First of all, can anyone tell me what type of argument is this? What pattern this question is based on? This argument? No one. Okay. Well, this was a very clear example of data and statistics, guys. I told you very clearly on a data and statistics argument. See here, they're clearly talking about the average amount of overtime, right? Average amount of overtime is 14 hours. And just because the average is 14 hours and that doesn't change much, they're concluding, therefore, each month, most employees almost certainly work at least some overtime. Obviously, if I say that average marks of the class is 60, does that mean that everyone has got a 60, guys, or most of them have got 60? Is that what the data implies? Not necessarily, right? Because data, I mean, averages can be very misleading, guys. Let's say some people may have, extraordinarily high marks, and some people may have extraordinarily low marks, right? And then average could still be 60, right? So just because the average amount is 14 hours, that does not mean that most of the employees work at least some overtime. Some may work no overtime at all. And the only logical choice presenting that was D part overlooks the possibility that even if on average certain amount of overtime is worked by the members of some group, many members of that group may work no overtime at all. That is the problem with this argument, right? Because it said at least some overtime is worked, but that is not necessarily true. Yes or no? Do we understand, everyone? Are we clear here, everyone? What's the problem with C? Absolutely. Let's have a look at it, Satvik. So here C part says it confuses a claim for which the argument's conclusion about the Aglet Corporation would necessarily follow with a claim that would follow only with a higher degree of probability. Is that the case? Is that even possibly the argument suggesting that it is a higher degree of probability or anything? No, it very clearly and categorically certainly work at least some overtime. So there is no degree of probability involved, first of all, right? I mean, C part was, to be honest, not even in contention base. It confuses a claim, first of all. Which claim are we confusing with? Right? That would necessarily follow. The argument itself says certainly, right? So that is a very categorical conclusion, any which way is given to you, right? You're getting my point, guys. If you focus on that type of argument, I hope that, that's my point is clear to you, that identifying the type of argument will change the story for you upside down. Because if you're doing it just like any random person who has no clue of what are the different types of arguments, then you can see how difficult the question can be and what sort of choices we are going to land among. But for someone who knows that, okay, this is a data type argument where percentages can be misleading, you can clearly see that D part absolutely is the most logical answer choice here, right? Are we clear here, everyone? Everyone, guys, I hope the point is quite clear to you and everyone understands how this is going to be. All right then. So here I have another question for you. Now this is an assumption one. Let's have a look at this one, guys. Please go ahead. The poll is live as well. Let's see what choice we go for. Please go ahead. All right, guys. Ending the poll now. Plenty of time for everyone, I believe. Let's have a look at what choice we're going for. Now here, I believe you can see the poll results, everyone. So here, three people have gone for C part. Well, B part and D part and E part have been selected as well. Let's have a look. Which one is the right one? What choice should we be going for? Okay. So here, first of all, you need to understand the argument in a manner that you understand what is the conclusion, right? As I said earlier, it's important that we figure out what is the conclusion here, right? So as you can see here, the conclusion is that most people apply weaker moral standards to themselves than to others. Right? That is the conclusion here, that people apply weaker moral standards to themselves than to others. Why are we saying so? Based on a couple of experiments that were conducted. One experiment where they were given an option to select a task. Everyone selected easy task and said that they've acted fairly, right? And another experiment where the same scenario was described to people, and people said that no, it's not fair for you to select an easy task. That part is clear to everyone. Guys, are we clear so far? Right. So basically, the argument is that when it is your turn and you are selecting an easy task, then it was fair. But when other people were described, they same action, they said that it was not fair. So how can I conclude that it is people apply weaker moral standards? Look at the word weaker implies that there is a comparison going on. The only way I can conclude this is by assuming that if the situation were to be reversed, then people's response would reverse as well. Meaning that if the first group was given the second option and the second group was given the first scenario, even the same group would have selected easy task and would have said that they have acted fairly. And the same people who selected easy task for themselves, when they were asked the same scenario, they would have said that, oh, it's not fair to go for an easy task, right? So that is what a typical assumption is going to be. And sadly, the only correct answer was A part, which no one has gone for. At least some volunteers who said that they've acted fairly in choosing the easy task would have said that it was unfair for someone else to do so. Meaning, people who have acted fairly, I mean, who believe that they've acted fairly in choosing the easy task, would not have the same judgment when it was, it was someone else's turn. Are we clear here, everyone? So, as you can see, guys, all the other choices that you've gone for should not have been, in consideration, such as the most moral choice. Who is talking about the most moral choice? The argument is not even concerned with, the most moral choice. That is what I call as an extreme statement, guys. Remember, it was about a weaker moral standard, right? Hard task, irrelevant. The argument is only concerned with people who've gone for the easy task. More accurate in their moral judgment, it's irrelevant, guys. We're not talking about how accurate people are. It's about how their perception changes, right? Some volunteers given the assigning, they believe that they've only fair choice. Absolutely irrelevant, guys. It's not about if they believe they have made the fair choice or not. Rather, it's about if their perception will change or not. Are we clear here, everyone? Here then, guys, I have another one for you. Let's have a look at this. The poll is live for you. Please go ahead. Let's see what we select. All right, guys. So ending the poll now. Let's have a look what choice we're going for. So here, as you can see, majority has opted for C part, which I believe is the right choice. As you can see, it's a medium difficulty level question. So as I hope you can see, guys, how the kind of impact your accuracy you'll have basically depending on the difficulty level, right? So this was a paradox question, by the way, right? So we'll have to explain, despite more, you know, here the number of avalanches remaining the same, right? More tourists coming in, right? Increased. The number of people caught in avalanches decreased. Now that is a little surprising, right? Total number of people coming, a more. Number of avalanche, the same. Still less people were caught in avalanches. How is that possible? Why is that so? Right? The only logical answer choice to this would have been C part. People used increasingly accurate information about which locations likely to be in the path of avalanches, and that's why they were able to avoid those places, and that led to a clear reduction in the number of people who were caught in avalanches. I hope that is clear to you guys, everyone. Okay. Construction often led to the clearing of wooded areas that help to prevent avalanches. Whoever is gone with E part, guys, by the way, let me tell you, the only logical thing you could possibly say with E part is that number of avalanches increased, but that has been given to you as a fact. Here, no reduction in the number of avalanches here, right? And if number of avalanches increased, all the more reason more people should have been avalanches rather than less people. So I hope you get the idea that it's not going to be helpful if I go with E part. That is just irrelevant here. Is not out of scope, not at all. Guys, first of all, let's understand what do we even mean by out of scope, right? An out of scope answer choice. I mean, what do you mean by out of scope, Chandan? First of all, let's hear it from you. What do you mean to imply? What is an out of scope answer choice? Which is not okay. That is exactly what I thought. So, guys, please understand. Never eliminate any answer choice. Okay. Now, this is a golden rule for everyone. Never eliminate any answer choice saying that, oh, it was not given to me. It doesn't have to be, guys. Please read the question carefully. Which of the following, if true? You have to assume that all answer choices are true. Okay. Do not eliminate any answer choice saying that it was not given to me. Hence, I eliminated. And if you see, never so far I have eliminated any choice saying that it is not given. Out of scope does not mean that it is not given to you, right? The question already takes care of it. It tells you that which of the following is true. So you have to assume all choices are true. So the right question you got to ask, when is a choice out of scope? Let's understand that. An out of scope choice is something that, even if it is true, right? I'm not saying that it's not true. Even if it is true, it has no impact on the argument. It is irrelevant. For example, avalanches were most likely to happen when a large snowfall covered an older layer of snow. Okay, good to know. But does it matter? Does it help me understand why the number of people caught in avalanches is less? Does it have any impact in any possible manner it can contribute to help me understand that? irrelevant. So a choice which is irrelevant, a choice which has no impact on the argument or its reasoning, is what we define as out of scope, not because it is not given to me. Okay. It is absolutely okay. If you look at it, all of the five choices are not given to you. None of the choices are there in the argument, right? Everyone. And it's a very common misunderstanding, right? Good that Chandan pointed it out. I mean, it's a very common misunderstanding that people have that, okay, out of scope is something that is not given to you, right? And especially, when the question is a little difficult and clock is ticking, we tend to make such mistakes. But I hope this is clear to everyone, guys, that it is not something which is not given to you. It is rather something which has no impact on the argument. And that you can only figure out if you understand the argument better, if you have your concepts clear, if you know what type of argument you're dealing with, if you know what sort of pattern you're dealing with, only then, right? Only then will you be able to identify what sort of question or what sort of argument pattern is it and what sort of choice should we go for. Are we clear here, everyone? All right, cool. So here is another one for you guys, launching the poll. The poll is live. Please go ahead. Let's select. Let's see what choice you're going with. Please go ahead. All right, guys, time's up. Ending the poll now. Let's have a look at what choice we're going with. Let's find out here. So here, another very interesting question, by the way. And if you look at it, the conclusion clearly says that plastic sleds are clearly I mean, basically, are more dangerous. Why? Because there was a number of children injured in sledding was higher last winter than it was 10 years ago. Since there is a data being presented that number of children injured last this thing were more, right? That's why we are saying that plastic sleds are more dangerous. So if you have to weaken, by the way, right? If you have to simply weaken, you'll have to simply point out that it is not the case, right? You'll have to point out that plastic sleds are not more dangerous. Yes or no, everyone? So here, let's have a look at it. You've gone with A part. A few children still use wooden sleds. Does it matter, guys? Just because a few children use, does it really help me say that plastic sleds are not dangerous? Remember, when it comes to undermining, you'll have to challenge the conclusion of the author, right? Whereas A part will not achieve anything. I mean, I don't think if A part will help you with anything, by the way, right? Few children wear any kind of protective gear. If they don't wear any kind of protective gear, now that's true for everyone, guys. Doesn't matter, right? Plastic or wooden, it is irrelevant. Plastic sleds can be used in a much wider variety. That was the only logical answer choice that should have been correct. Again, sadly, no one has gone for it, right? I'll talk about it a little more. Most sledding occurs when a sled collides with a tree, rock. That will be same for both plastic and wooden. Because traditional wooden sled can carry more than one rider, are we talking about wooden sleds are more dangerous? Not really, irrelevant, guys. Now, the only logical choice was C part here, which clearly tells me that just because an activity is being done more, right? Plastic sleds can be used in a much wider variety, meaning that it can be used more. Just because an activity can be used more, does not mean that it is more dangerous, right? All it is trying to help me point out is that it can be used more, right? So obviously, if it is being used more, it is going to be a little more. I mean, it is going to be involved in more accidents, more injuries, right? Let's say you tell me who's more likely to be involved in an accident, guys? Someone who's who drives for 10 kilometers or someone who drives 10,000 kilometers? Obviously, someone who drives 10,000 kilometers, right? So someone who drives more obviously is more likely to be in an injury. But does that mean that driving is dangerous? Not really, right? So that is absolutely not the case, guys, and that is something that we must really look into. I hope we get the idea, right? I hope we are clear about it. Everyone, guys, do we understand? Okay. Can you explain E? Okay. E part says because traditional wooden sleds, are we even talking about, guys? Why are we even trying to talk about how and what will we achieve if we, let's say, point out wooden sled leads to more injuries, right? The objective was to point out that plastic sleds and all, right? And if you look at it here, wooden sleds can carry more than one rider, and an accident involving a wooden sled can result in several children being injured. Fine. So what? For as a matter of fact, you know that number of children injured while sledding last year was higher than 10 years ago. And the argument has clearly established that 10 years ago, plastic sleds became popular. So it's clearly showing you that since the advent of plastic sleds, the injuries have gone up. Right now, if even if I point out that this is not the case, and it may be that wooden sleds can probably cause more injury. So again, all of this will not really help me in any way, right? Can, may, not really a very good choice that could possibly help me in any manner. I hope you get the idea, guys. Everyone, are we clear here? Right. So as you can clearly see, guys, this is what it takes to really understand, the higher difficulty level questions and how can you ensure that you can solve these questions with a higher accuracy and that too in the limited time period that you have, right? All of these critical reasoning questions, you must target an average of less than 2 minutes, right? So the only way you can have a crack at it is by understanding the different argument types and knowing exactly how to deal with each of these question types. And that is something exactly what we cover in our training module, right? So people who are already part of the program, guys, a warm welcome and welcome to everyone, right? People who are not can fill this form that I've shared in the chat. This is for our reference, right? And it'll help us connect with you. And in case you have any queries, you can ask me, or in case you have any queries related to GMAT prep or the admissions, please feel free to connect with Mr. Deepak on the number on your screen, and we'll be able to help you out. Are we clear here? So, in case you have no questions for me, guys, in that case, that'll be all for tonight. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you in the sessions. All the best and good night.